and welcome back to Sarah Says. So today I thought I would do the very much requested breastfeeding video. My journey, tips, advice, and basically just a story about, just a chit chat basically between us about breastfeeding and what's difficult and what's hard and tips, and loads of you guys have asked me questions, so I'll go through those as well. I've been wanting to do this for over a year and I just never got around to doing it, and I thought this is the perfect time and the perfect place for it. So let's go. So despite not actually being brought up in a breastfeeding family, I mean, my nana said that she breastfed some of her children. Obviously I wasn't alive then. My mum didn't breastfeed, and I didn't actually know anybody that breastfed when I was growing up. So despite that, I knew that from quite a young age, I'd say, that when I had children, I definitely wanted to at least try to breastfeed. Just in case you don't know, I've got 5 children and I successfully breastfed the last 2. And I didn't successfully breastfeed the first 3, obviously. And there was a few reasons why I wasn't successful with my first 3, but the main one being was that I was so uneducated on breastfeeding. And it's not through choice. There was a lot of factors, but it's basically lack of knowledge on breastfeeding, on everything about it, the struggles that you will experience, what's normal and what's not. And it wasn't easy when I had my first child, Isabelle, who's now 17, to just nip onto social media. 17 years ago, social media was a no. It's not that it didn't exist. I think it was like MySpace back then, but it definitely wasn't what it is today. So there was no big groups to go on for advice. I mean, if you go on Facebook now and type in breastfeeding support, hundreds of pages will come up with thousands and hundreds of thousands of members ready, there, experts, waiting to answer your questions, give you help, support and advice. Also, I meant to say this at the start of the video, I'm not an expert. I'm not claiming to be an expert. I'm not claiming to know everything about breastfeeding. I'm just a mum with 5 children, so I do have a bit of knowledge. Just want to put that out there. But with Isabelle, she was my first and I breastfed her for about 3 weeks. The reason I didn't do longer with Isabelle is because I had no support. So I didn't really have any support with breastfeeding. It's not that the people around me were against breastfeeding, because they weren't, and they were glad that I was trying breastfeeding. But I didn't have anybody around me that gave me a lot of encouragement, I guess. And I think you really do need that, especially as a first-time young mum like I was. It was more a case of, well, if it's too hard, just give her a bottle. Or if it's too hard, just put her on formula. Or if I'd be like, I was up all night, well, why don't you just give her a bottle? It might fill her up more. It was more that. It wasn't that they were against breastfeeding. It's just that I didn't have the right support to succeed, if that makes sense. And it's not other people's fault. It's also my fault, because I didn't, well, no one's at fault. I don't want to use that word actually. No one's at fault. No big drama happened. But I just didn't have the right knowledge on what was normal and what wasn't. All I was told was, just keep breastfeeding. Just keep breastfeeding. And when I'd say, like, to the health visitor or the midwife, like, she's not really gaining much weight, or she cries constantly, she never seems settled, they'd just say, just keep at it. They didn't say, that's normal, this is what happens, and this is why this happens, and this is why she's doing this. It was more just, you're doing a great job, keep going. And I think that just led me to doubt my supply, which is why I failed breastfeeding, why I didn't succeed breastfeeding with my first 3. I was convinced 100% that I didn't have enough milk. I didn't produce enough milk. My body didn't do what it should have done, and for some reason, I just didn't produce enough milk to satisfy them. But in reality, that is so rare. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, it does, but it's very, very, very rare. And actually, what I was experiencing, constant crying, never seemed settled, slow weight gain, were all typically normal things that you should expect if you're hoping to exclusively breastfeed. A lot of the time when your baby's crying, they're encouraging milk supply. Slow weight gain is something that you should definitely keep an eye on, but actually, I've had slow weight gain with all of my babies, even the 2 that were successful in breastfeeding. Lots of people say, or midwives professions say, that you should be back up to birth weight within, what is it, like 2 weeks or something like that, and then you can be discharged. Well, I was like 6 weeks before I think it was Jace got back up to his birth weight. So if you're planning on now I just want to say also that I know there's a certain audience that will be watching this vlog, and that's fine. I know that breastfeeding can cause a lot of tension between women, and I think that's so sad, but completely understandable. I know there's a lot of emotions that surround this subject, and there's a lot of opinions. I'm not against formula feeding. I formula fed my 3 girls. They're not unhealthy children, they're still healthy. There are so many pros though to breastfeeding, and some people are successful and some people are not, and that's for various reasons. Whilst breastfeeding is definitely one of the most rewarding, like I can't even tell you how amazing it makes me feel to know that I breastfed Jace and Mila up until around, well, Jace was around 14, 15 months, and Mila is now 15 months, and she still breastfeeds. It's the most rewarding feeling ever to know that I, myself, my body did what it was supposed to do, and I was successful in doing that. It's a really weird feeling, and there's so many positives to breastfeeding. I'll get to the positives and the negatives in this video, but I feel so good knowing that I did that for them. I know this will probably cause some controversy and maybe a bit of upset, so I apologise in advance, but breastfeeding is the best for your baby. And I know that on social media, people get their backs up and they use the term, no, fed is best, as long as your baby's fed. And I agree, a baby being fed is better than a baby not being fed. But you can't argue with science. Breast milk is better for your baby than not breastfeeding your baby. Fed is the minimum. Fed's not best. Fed is the minimum we should be doing for our children. And obviously there's a lot that factors into that. So I'm saying that quite broadly, but I do know that a lot of other things factor in. It's not just a case of, well, it's the best, so every parent should do it, because I know it's not as simple as that for a lot of people. Some people do suffer with supply. Some people don't have the support they need. They don't have the knowledge that they need. They don't have the support they need. Their mental health isn't great, and so they're unhappy. And there's so much that factors in being able to actually breastfeed. But it's scientifically proven that breast milk is the best thing you can give your baby if you are happy to do it, if you're able to do it, and if you have enough supply to do so. So breast milk supplies all the nutrients that your baby needs in the appropriate proportions. It also protects against allergies, sickness, and I also read online it protects against obesity. Not sure if that's a fact or not, but I did read that up online. It can also protect against diabetes and cancers for the mum. So I know that if you can breastfeed successfully, your chances of breast cancer reduce by a significant amount. I'm not sure what the actual amount is, but it does reduce the risk of breast cancer. There's so many positives. It saves you money. There's so many positives, but I will also say that breastfeeding is by far one of the hardest parenting things that I've gone through. And I have children from baby to 17. And it is definitely the hardest hurdle to get through. When I say I couldn't move off the sofa for the first 10 weeks of definitely Jace's life, and probably Mila's too, I'm not exaggerating. I pretty much spent 10 weeks sat on the spot. I'm one of those people that's quite outgoing. I don't mind going out and breastfeeding in public. It doesn't worry me that somebody might come over and say, ew, put your boob away. That doesn't worry me at all. I'd literally tell them to get lost. I'm not an anxious person, but I don't shadow the fact that if you are that type of person, how daunting it might seem to have to do that. So in a way, I feel lucky. I was able to still go out with Mila. I had the older girls, I had Chris, my husband, with me, and I didn't worry about it quite as much. But I can imagine how daunting that is for a lot of first-time new mums that do have those worries. So if you're planning on breastfeeding, here's what to expect. A lot of tears from yourself, probably. Hormones will be everywhere, you'll be tired, and also from your baby. I feel like breastfed babies are more unsettled than formula-fed babies. And that's because their crying stimulates your breasts to produce milk and the milk that they need. I know midwives will probably disagree with me on this one, but I feel like they sleep less. My 3 girls were in a solid 7:30 bedtime to 8 a.m, 7:30 p.m. bedtime till 8 a.m. the next morning routine from about 5-6 months old. And my younger 2, Jace and Mila, it actually makes me laugh when I think about routine. Like, they have, I mean, it's our lifestyle change as well, so maybe that's part of it, but they definitely slept worse. I've had to co-sleep with both of them because there's just no way that I could settle them in their own cots and then get back to sleep before they'd wake up and need another feed. It's easier to co-sleep, and there are safe ways to co-sleep if you are planning on breastfeeding and co-sleeping. It's likely, if it's your first time breastfeeding, that you will get swollen, sore, cut, bleeding nipples. Now, this video is probably putting so many of you off breastfeeding. Don't let it, because these hurdles are easily overcome, and like I said at the start of this video, the rewards way outweigh these hurdles that you will have to go through. Sore nipples are a sign of poor latch. So a tiny bit of tenderness when they first latch on is normal, but if you're experiencing severe pain, like I did with Jace and with Isabelle, I'm not joking, the nipple almost fell off. Like, it was cut from one side all the way down to the other. Yeah. It is a sign of poor latch. I don't want to give any advice on latch because I'm not an expert. Actually, Jace and Mila both had quite shallow latches, but breastfeeding still worked for me, and I experienced 0 tenderness with Mila. I don't know if that's because I had her quite close to Jace, because Jace, oh, the pain. I actually had to use nipple shields for about, I don't know how long, maybe 10 weeks or something, and they saved my breastfeeding journey, because if I didn't have those, I don't think I could have pushed through that pain. It's literally a toe curling pain. It's pain, severe pain. And I was crying at pretty much every feed. So you really, the most important thing, the biggest piece of advice I can give you is get support for your latch. Make sure it's right. And I don't just mean by a midwife or a health visitor. No offence to anybody that might be one of those professionals that are watching this video, but I was told multiple times that my latch was amazing with Jace. No tongue tie. Turns out he had like a 99% tongue tie, and his latch was very shallow, and that's why I was... So make sure you don't just go to one person. Check it with a few people. There's some amazing Facebook groups that give support on latch. You have to really tilt their heads back. No nose should be blocked. It should be chin to breast, clear nose, head back. There's loads of support online on how you can get that really good deep latch. Do your absolute best to push through those first 10 weeks. Some people say 6 weeks, some people say 12. It's always been around 10 weeks for me. And after that 10-week barrier, that's when your baby starts to be a little bit more awake and alert and can be soothed by someone else. Not for long, granted, but, you know, while you go get a shower or you make dinner or, I don't know, things around 10 weeks seem to really ease up for me. And I saw a massive difference, and I felt so much better in myself. And at that stage, I think breastfeeding became so easy. Like, one day, it just clicks and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I pushed through that hurdle at the start, because now I wouldn't give it up for the world. It's so easy, and it's so much more than feeding your baby. Your baby won't just breastfeed. That's another thing why they feed so much. They don't only breastfeed for food. It's so important to remember that, because the amount of times people said to me, they're feeding again. They've only just had a feed. They can't possibly be hungry. No, they might not be hungry, but maybe they've got tummy ache. Maybe their teeth are hurting. Maybe they're feeling a bit insecure. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they just want a hug. There's so many reasons why a breastfed baby wants to breastfeed. It's not just food. Maybe they're thirsty. Maybe they need a drink. Honestly, there's so much more to it than just giving your baby a meal. If you feel like your supply might be low, the biggest indicator of this is the amount of wet nappies they produce in one day. A baby should produce at least 6 really wet nappies in 24 hours. So there should be at least 6. If you're not getting that, that is an indication that your supply may be low if accompanied by other things like constantly unsettled baby and very slow weight gain. Those are indication of low supply. I can't stress enough how just a baby crying or seeming unsettled isn't an indication on low supply. I genuinely thought I was starving. I remember Isla, her weight gain was so slow. I think she was born on like the 25th centile. She went down to the 10th, then the 5, then the 0.2, and she was so unsettled. And I gave her a bottle of formula and she slept for 3 hours straight at about 10 weeks old, which was the most she'd slept since she'd been born. And that made me feel so guilty because I was thinking, oh my gosh, she was actually starving. She was starving. I can't believe this. I'm not breastfeeding no more. She's going on to formula. She wasn't. She wasn't starving. And the reason she was so sleepy after that is because when formula-fed babies feed, they often take on more than what they need because obviously the bottle, it's not controlled by them. They're just drinking. It's coming out fast. And so they sleep more because it takes longer to digest, etc., etc. There's so many reasons. But I was convinced the only reason she slept for 3 hours was because I must have been starving her and now she's full and now she's content. So it's so important to understand and make sure you have all the knowledge you need to succeed and be successful in breastfeeding. So many people have a 6-month goal, so many, me included. I just wanted to get to 6 months. If I can feed for 6 months, then I'm going to stop. When you get to 6 months, if you get to 6 months, it's so unlikely you'll want to stop breastfeeding because it's so convenient, so easy. You'll realise the rewards by that point. You'll have bonded so much with your baby. And I'm not saying you won't bond if you bottle feed. That's absolutely not what I'm saying right now. But there's so many rewards for you and the baby if you get to 6 months old that it's so unlikely you'll want to stop at that stage. Hence why I'm now 15 months and still feeding Mila. Another thing that I know a lot of women worry about that I did just want to reassure about in this video is when I get to 6 months old, I need to go back. When they get to 6 months old, I need to go back to work and they won't take a bottle. It's fine. That is absolutely fine. Once your baby gets to 6 months old, they don't need your milk to get through the day. They'll be starting to wean at that point and it is completely okay, completely normal. And this is from experts, not just me advising you to feed your baby on a morning, go to work for the day, come home, feed your baby again. And I know lots of you guys will also be worrying about how your baby will cope throughout the day. I'm not speaking for all babies here, but generally, babies want to feed more when they can see you, they can smell you, they know you're near, and when they're with someone else, they're generally more occupied and unlikely to want to breastfeed. So I decided to do this video with no plan and just wing it and go for like a chat style video. And I regret it big time because I feel like I've just waffled on in no particular order and probably missed out loads of important information. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get into some of your questions that you guys have asked and hopefully I'll be able to answer them for you. Have you tried expressing before baby is born? No, absolutely not. It's not recommended that you do express before your baby is born. And in fact, it's not recommended that you express at all until your baby is 6 weeks old, because at that stage, when you get to 6 weeks, that's when your milk supply has, your milk supply is steadied out. So it's regulated, this is the word I'm looking for, and you start to feed on demand. If you start to express before 6 weeks, there's some rare cases where midwives do advise to up supply, but if you do start doing that before 6 weeks, it's very likely that you will encourage an oversupply, which can come with a huge amount of problems. I thought, oh my gosh, oversupply, great, I'll just express loads. No. From what I've read online, it can cause a huge amount of problems, including mastitis, which is an infection in your breast and can be extremely painful, can actually lead to hospital admission. So it is not recommended that you express before your baby's born. It can encourage early labour, and it's not recommended that you express in the first 6 weeks. Also, speaking about expressing, that is no indication on your supply. I cannot express, I can't. I can sit, and that was another reason I gave up with Isla, because not only was she like not gaining weight at all, never settled, but I'd express for like an hour. I'd be sat there just expressing and I'd get nothing, like not even 1 ounce. And so I thought, well, if I can't get an ounce out with a bottle, surely she can't. That's not how it works. Your baby is the only thing that can, for some women, effectively get milk out. Expressing doesn't work for so many women that I know, and some can put on the pump and will get 5 ounce out in 10 minutes, and some will sit there for an hour and literally get nothing, and that was me. I could not express. I remember when Jace was born, I was going to a concert with my sister when I think he was like 4 months old. Was he about 4 months old? And I was dreading it, and it literally took me about 3 weeks to get a 7 ounce supply of milk for him. And I remember being fuming because it's recommended that you do it in like 1 ounces. So you do like 1 ounce, 2, and then another ounce and another. You don't do all 7 ounce in one bag because it can be wasted. And I remember I did like 3 or 4 2 ounce bags, and Chris just took all of them out the freezer, defrosted all of them, put them all into one bottle. Jace drank like 1 ounce, and then the whole like 6 ounce went to waste. When does it stop hurting? It shouldn't hurt. And the first couple of weeks it might be slightly tender when they first latch on, but if it's really hurting, like I mentioned before, toe curling, crying, you really need to get some support and check for that latch being correct. How long does Mila feed for? Mila feeds quite often through the night. I say feeds, she doesn't feed. I need to stop using that word. She comforts herself a lot throughout the night. Like some nights it can be 2 or 3 times. No. Some nights it can be like 3 or 4 times, and some nights it can be 10 or 12. Like, it's, her routine's not great, and we are working on that. Throughout the day though, she'll ask for it maybe 2 or 3 times, and sometimes if I'm busy I'll say, no, it's not there, darling, it's all gone. And she just accepts that and goes off. And sometimes I'll let her feed if she wants to. She's had a bit of a cold, so I have been letting her feed if she's got a cold, or if she's not feeling great, or if she hurts herself, if she like falls and bangs her head or something, I don't know, I'm just using an example, then I know that if I pick her up and let her feed or let her comfort herself, she'll stop crying instantly. Another amazing thing I love about breastfeeding. Someone's asked, how do you ensure that you have enough of a supply? So I have mentioned this a little bit earlier on, but it's literally so important to understand that the way to tell if you've got enough supply is your baby's nappies. They should be having around 6 wet nappies in 24 hours. If they're having less than that, and there's other factors like weight gain, unsettled, there could be a supply issue. If your baby's having 5, 6 wet nappies in 24 hours, you don't need to worry about supply. If they're not taking it in, there'd be nothing coming out. So if there's wee coming out, they're taking it in. Someone's asked, have you ever been told to cover up and not breastfeed when you're out and about? Never. I've never been told that. That doesn't worry me. If anybody told me to cover up when I was giving my child a meal or to go away or anything like that, I would literally tell them to get lost. I would just be like, go away. What's the other one I just read? Have you breastfed all your kids? Only the last 2. Unfortunately, I was way too uneducated to feed my first 3 girls. And you know what? I don't really feel mega guilt about that. And I don't know why. I thought I would, but I don't. And it's because it's what worked for me at the time. So I know that I was saying before about how, breastfeeding is the best thing you can do for your child. If you can, it's not the end of the world. I'm saying that factual and scientifically factual, but I'm not saying that as a mum to another mum. If you can't breastfeed, it's not the end of the world. I don't feel guilt because I didn't breastfeed my first 3 girls. They were loved, they were happy, they were fed, and that's what worked for me at the time. It's what made our family happy at the time. It's what was right for us at the time. And it made me relax more knowing that they'd got that 5 ounce in them. And I wouldn't change that because I was so unhappy when I was breastfeeding them. So Isabelle, I fed her for about 3 weeks. Esme, I can't remember, to be honest. It wasn't much more than that. And Isla was 10 weeks. And honestly, like, hand on heart, they were like the worst 10 weeks of being a parent. I was not happy during those 10 weeks. I was constantly worrying. I was constantly crying. I was constantly stressed. I felt constantly worried that I wasn't giving them what they needed. And it was genuinely not a nice time. And it shouldn't be like that when you've got a newborn baby. So if it is like that for you, then you do what's right for you and right for your family. I don't feel guilt that I didn't breastfeed my first 3 girls. I'm so happy that I was successful in feeding Jace and Mila. If I was to have another child, then I'd want to give them that same. And if I had the knowledge that I have now back then, I would have persevered with the 3 girls. But I don't feel guilt because I didn't successfully breastfeed them. Someone said, is it tiring to do? 100% absolutely. I can't play down. I can't play down to encourage others because it is the hardest thing I've ever had to do as a parent. And that's not an exaggeration. It's so much more harder than you think, especially in those first 10 weeks when you've gone through pregnancy and you've gone through labour and you just want to get in bed and go to sleep for a few hours and you just cannot. And I'm only speaking from my experience and the experience of my friends and family and people online that I've spoken to. I'm sure there are some mums out there that are like, what are you talking about? My baby breastfeeds and then sleeps for 3 hours, and amen to you if that's you. That's never been me. In those first few months, in those first 3 or so months, it is extremely draining and tiring. But after that, it's so rewarding, like beyond measure. And someone's also just asked, does it get harder? So following on from that last question, it gets so easy. Like so easy to know that if your child's hungry or thirsty or sad or in pain or tired, to know that you can just say, come here, pop them on, and they're instantly happy. I can't tell you how that feels to be able to do that. So someone's asked, why do you think breastfeeding's been so successful with Jace and Mila and not the 3 girls? And like I said before, 100% knowledge. I was so uneducated on what was normal and what was not, which is why it's vital to educate yourself. Join those breastfeeding support groups. Get on Facebook now if you're on Facebook. Join those support groups because there's so many questions on there asked every single day, and they're often the same questions asked by different people, and there's so much love and support and advice on what's normal and what's not, and it will really help in those early days. Someone's also asked, when are you planning to fully stop breastfeeding? I'd planned on stopping at 12 months, but Mila just... I planned on stopping at 6 months, and then I was like, well, we'll go to 12 months. That's when Jace kind of lost interest. But Mila hasn't really lost interest, and it's not a big deal to feed her unless her night times are going to continue the way they are. That's the thing that's making me want to stop right now. Nothing else makes me want to stop because it's not hard. The only thing that's making me want to stop is to get her into a nighttime routine where she's sleeping better and I'm sleeping better, which is something we're working on. There's quite a few people asking on tips for weaning a toddler, and unfortunately I can't help there because I haven't had to wean. With Jace, he weaned himself super early, and I think that's because we started topping him up with formula through the night. So he started doing he always did what Mila does now, so constant feeding throughout the night. And I can't remember his exact age, maybe 10, 11, 12 months, I can't remember. But Chris, I basically left the bedroom for a couple of nights, and Chris, whenever he woke up during the night in his cot, instead of me feeding him and co-sleeping, Chris gave him a bottle of formula. And then he did that for a couple of weeks, and then he started sleeping through. And when he started sleeping through, he stopped feeding through the night, and he just lost interest in breastfeeding through the day. So I didn't actually wean him, he weaned himself super early. I don't have advice. unfortunately, or tips on weaning a toddler, but there is a lot of people ask that question on a few of the Facebook groups that I'm on, so I definitely recommend that you go and check out those. Someone's also asked, do you think it's okay to feed your child until they self-wean? Absolutely. There's absolutely nothing wrong with breastfeeding until your child's ready to wean. That usually happens around age 2. I've read online a few times. I don't know if that's a fact or not, but I am definitely not going to comment on whether your child's too young to stop breastfeeding or your child's too old to still be breastfeeding, should I say. It's each to their own on that with me. Have you ever suffered mastitis? Never. There's a lot of tips for increasing supply. I got told oats were very good, so I used to eat oats with Jace. There's like breastfeeding cookies. I didn't personally try those out myself, but I have heard a lot about those. I didn't notice a massive difference for anything that I did. So unfortunately, I can't help more on that subject. Someone said, have you ever not woken up when the baby's crying? Never. I am the lightest sleeper in the world. If Mila literally goes, I'm gonna wake up. If she moves her foot, I wake up. Mila's never cried throughout the night because she's never needed to. She never has ever cried. Somebody said actually when we went away in our van on our main channel, the Ingham Family, how do you cope with Mila waking up through the night? It's so unfair, like if she wakes up Jason and the girls. Mila never cries throughout the night. Like it's so rare that she would cry. She fidgets and she puts her head up and looks around, and I'll shush her back to sleep by breastfeeding her. She never cries throughout the night because I'm such a light sleeper. I'm such a light sleeper. Someone saying that their exclusively breastfed baby is still breastfeeding and they haven't had a period. That's completely normal. Breastfeeding does often suppress ovulation, and so that will obviously mean you don't get a period. I, with Jace, got my periods back so early. I think it was around 4 months, and with Mila, I think it was around 6 months. But I have heard a lot of women don't get their periods back for a year, 18 months, even 2 years, some of them. And I just want to say that that is completely normal. Someone's asked, did you find cluster feeding stopped as Mila got older? Absolutely, they stopped cluster feeding, or Mila stopped cluster feeding at around 3 months old. Cluster feeding is basically when your baby wants to feed constantly for hours on end, which is basically the first 3 months of her life for me. All babies cluster feed, breastfed babies, they'll do it sometimes. They can have fussy periods on an evening, sometimes on a morning, sometimes throughout the afternoon. My baby's just had cluster feeding throughout the whole day. So, like I said, I spent the first 10 weeks sat on the sofa pretty much with her. Have you ever felt you missed out on time with the other children? I think this says. I'm trying not to open them and just scroll through. Yes, the mum guilt is real during those first breastfeeding weeks. Like, I felt so guilty all the time that I couldn't give the 4 other children as much attention. And I just kept telling myself, this time is so precious with my newborn baby. No damage is going to be done with the 4 children over these first few weeks, first couple of months. Chill out. And when I look back now over that time, I wish more so that I'd have told myself that more, because those first few weeks of the newborn baby you can never get back. There's years and years and years to give your older children as all the attention in the world when your newborn's a little bit older and can occupy themselves. But you don't ever get back those early days, and they're so precious. It's unreal. They are so precious. So try and push that mum guilt down and try and enjoy your newborn baby, because in a few weeks' time, they'll be past that stage. They'll be happy to sit and play with toys on their own, and you'll have all the time in the world for your older children. And don't forget that those older children were also in that newborn stage at one point. How long after you've stopped breastfeeding did your milk dry up? That's a really good question, because it's so unique to each lady. I don't think there's a, it should be by this point. Maybe there is, Google it, I don't know. But with me, it's instant. Like, within a few days, nothing. And I've heard other women say, I stopped breastfeeding my baby 6 months ago and I'm still lactating. What's this all about? So I think it must be unique to each individual, but with me it's always so quick, which makes me feel like I've never had an abundance of milk. I've never been able to express. I dry up really quickly. I know that my babies are satisfied. I know they're fed. Mila, bless her heart, she's a little chunk, and I love that about her. But my milk dries up very quickly when I stop. I did just want to answer this one and then I'm going to round up. But someone's just said, is it too late to start breastfeeding when my daughter is 2.5 weeks old? I don't think it is too late. I know a lot of first-time mums in that first week, because of how demanding the newborn is and how tired and drained the mum is, they gave up really quickly and then regretted it almost instantly. So they gave up, gave their baby formula for like 4 days in that first week because they were completely exhausted, which is totally understandable, and then regretted it and wanted to get back to breastfeeding. I've seen so many on the groups I'm on come on for help and advice, and all of the experts, not me, all of the experts on there are like, no, it's not too late, here's what you can do, here's what you need to do. Lots and lots and lots of skin to skin, so vital. Latch your baby on as much as they will latch on to stimulate that milk coming through again. And it's not too late. I don't want to give you directions on what to do because I'm not an expert in that area, and I don't want to give you the wrong advice, but there is, I'll pop up at the end of this screen a couple of pages that I joined that, and even if you don't want to ask the question yourself, you can search it in the top, like just put in, can my baby relatch after X amount of time, and it would bring it up. But I know that if she's only 2.5 weeks old, it's not too late. Okay, so last one. A few people have asked, is it stressful? Is it hard having all the pressure on you as mum if you're the only one that can feed the baby? And what was the biggest struggle? I'm not gonna sugarcoat breastfeeding because it is difficult. I've said it multiple times in this video. It's really difficult knowing that you're the only one that can settle your baby. It's not just like you can nip out to the shops and know that your baby's going to be okay, especially if they won't take a bottle, which was me. And I did struggle with both Mila and Jace in those first 10 weeks. I was really emotional. I was really stressed and had mum guilt going on. I was still trying to run our businesses. I was still trying to daily vlog on here, daily vlog on our main channel, the Ingham Family, and put a smile on for Jace and the girls and everyone on our channel that was watching. And it was a struggle in those first 10 weeks, but I couldn't be more happy that I persevered and got through those, because it's honestly the best thing. And probably, aside from my actual children, one of my biggest achievements. And I would say that the biggest struggle in those first 10 weeks is feeling like you can't do anything. You can't do anything. You can't even shower. I mean, you do shower obviously, but it's like the fastest, most stressful shower you've ever had, and you're in and out, and you're like, half the time you don't even have time to wash your hair, never mind shave your legs. And that was probably the biggest struggle in the first 10 weeks, not being able to split my time between all 5 of my children and just feeling like I didn't have a minute to even breathe, never mind do anything else. So I did just want to end this video by giving a little bit of advice for any first-time mums. And the biggest piece of advice I could give you is to get support and educate yourself on what's normal for breastfed babies and not panic. Stock up on all the biscuits you like, on all the sweeties you like, on all the cake in the cupboards. Rely on other people to do jobs that you can. You are going to be with your baby in your arms most of the day. Unless you're one of those super lucky mums, you are going to be. So you have to rely on other people to do those other jobs. Let your older child cook dinner if she offers. Let them hoover the floor. Let your husband do the dishes. Let your boyfriend do the washing. And really treasure those first few weeks with your baby. I feel like I spent a lot of my first few weeks worrying about what I wasn't doing instead of really treasuring and appreciating what I was doing, which was what was actually most important to me at that time, and that was to feed my baby in the best way that I felt was right for them. Those newborn days go by so quickly, you blink and they're gone and your baby's blooming crawling. So really, really treasure those times. Try not to put too much pressure on yourself to do other things and be thinking, I need to get this done, I need to get that done. Really? Things can wait. They really can. And you need to live in the moment and if you can do those things, I think you're more likely to be able to succeed in your breastfeeding journey. I hope that's answered everyone's questions. If anybody does have any more, comment them down below. I'm really sorry if this was a bit of a ruffled, jumbled load of breastfeeding chat. I probably should have put a plan together and started like expectations, reality, instead of just waffling my way through the whole video. But I hope that answered some of your questions. I hope I haven't offended anybody in anything I've said in this video. It's always a worry when you do what I do online and you kind of feel like you have to keep your opinion sometimes to yourself. But breastfeeding is something I feel quite passionate about. I know it's not for everybody, and I know that mental health and mum's mental health is very important. Very, very, very important. In fact, probably more important than what you feed your baby. It probably is. No, it definitely is, in fact. If mum's mental health's not right, baby's not going to be right. And it's more important that mum's happy than what the baby's eating. But what I'm saying and what I meant previously was, if you are in a good frame of mind, then, and you are able to do it and you do have the supply, then breast milk is the best thing that you can give your baby. I hope some of these words encourage some of you guys that are just starting out on your journey. If anyone does have any more questions, then obviously ask them down below and I will answer them to the best of my ability. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all back here next week.